The station was silent, save for the distant rumble of a train approaching, slicing through the crisp morning air. The smell of rusty metal and aged wood hung heavy in the atmosphere. A man, in a simple jacket and a travel bag beside him, waited on the empty platform, watching the train slow to a stop before him. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in hues of pink and lavender, and the first morning light illuminated the desolate scene. He descended from the carriage. His footsteps echoed in the silence, and he walked towards the exit. He was no ordinary traveler. He carried a strange device, a small metallic box with flashing lights, strapped to his waist by a worn belt. His name was Samuel Sage, and he had been dispatched to investigate reports of webs. He was hired by a Moscow university following a series of bizarre incidents. Residents near an abandoned field claimed to dream of unknown voices, see unseen landscapes, and feel emotions not their own. Some awoke with words in foreign languages written in their diaries, though they swore they hadn't written them. Samuel, skeptical by nature, attributed the reports to local superstitions, but the device on his belt suggested something more complex. A brainwave frequency receiver designed to detect abnormal patterns of mental activity. Upon reaching the field, he noticed the webs. Enormous, shimmering under the sun, they stretched between the trees like threads of silvery silk. They weren't spun by spiders, but by an unknown substance, almost liquid, that solidified upon contact with the air. Samuel collected a sample, but it dissolved in his hand, leaving only a tingling sensation. That night, he set up camp near the site. He fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the journey, but his sleep was interrupted by a vivid dream. He saw himself walking through a city he didn't recognize, with glass towers and deserted streets. A woman with silver hair appeared before him, whispering something in a language he didn't understand. Upon waking, he found a detailed drawing of the city in his notebook, though he had no memory of creating it. In the following days, he interviewed the local residents. An elderly woman, Anya, recounted that the dreams began after an antenna was installed near the field. The webs appeared soon after, she said, pointing towards the horizon. At night, they shimmered like fallen stars. Another man, a farmer named Myron, reported that his animals were acting strangely, congregating near the webs during the day and emitting high-pitched sounds at nightfall. Samuel documented everything, but his attention turned to the antenna. Upon investigating it, he discovered that it belonged to a neural technology company, Synapse Corporation, specializing in brain-computer interfaces. The connection between the webs and the antenna became clear when he analyzed the data from his receiver. The frequencies emitted by the antenna resonated with the webs, creating a kind of collective neural matrix. People who passed near the field were involuntarily connected, sharing memories, desires, and fears. He realized that Synapse Corporation had conducted an unauthorized experiment, using the field as a base to amplify their technology. But something had gone wrong. The web, initially designed to connect minds in a controlled manner, expanded beyond expectations, merging consciousnesses in a chaotic fashion. As he deepened his investigation, he himself began to feel the effects. Alien dreams invaded his nights, a musician playing a mournful melody on a mismatched piano, a child running through a maze of mirrors, a man weeping before an unmarked grave. Each vision was accompanied by intense emotion, as if they were his own memories. He tried to resist, but the line between his mind and the others became increasingly blurred. It was then that he met Ruby, a Synapse Corporation scientist who had worked on the original project. She admitted that the company had underestimated the risks. "We wanted to unite people, to create universal empathy," she said, her eyes welling up. "But the web doesn't discriminate. It absorbs everything, even that which shouldn't be." Ruby revealed that the antenna was merely a node in a global network, and that other fields like it existed on different continents. Humanity was being woven into a single consciousness, without realizing it. Samuel and Ruby decided to deactivate the antenna, but as they approached, they were paralyzed by an unseen force. The webs around them began to vibrate, emitting a blinding light. A chorus of voices echoed in their minds, thousands of whispers merging into a terrifying symphony. For a moment, he saw through Ruby's eyes, felt her guilt and fear. She, in turn, experienced his fierce determination. In that moment of absolute connection, they understood that shutting down the web would be like erasing a part of themselves. Night fell over the field, and the webs shone brighter than ever. He held the device, ready to destroy it, but hesitated. He knew that doing so would condemn the technology that could save lives, but also preserve human individuality. Ruby touched his hand, and for a second, they shared the same doubt. The answer, they realized, wasn't in choosing between connection and freedom, but in finding a balance that humanity had yet to conceive. As the sun rose, painting the sky once more in soft colors, he placed the device back in his bag. He would depart soon, but he knew that the web of dreams would remain as a reminder that every innovation carries within it the seed of its own destruction. The night in the field was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The webs, once shimmering like silver threads, transformed into dense shadows under the rising moon, casting winding patterns on the ground. The air was charged with a strange energy, as if the very space between the trees breathed. Ruby remained silent, observing the hypnotic movements of the structures. She knew that somewhere beyond that darkness, other antennas similar to the one pulsed, connecting minds in a global web. "If we shut this one down, others will remain active," she said, her voice barely audible. "The web is bigger than we imagined." A shiver ran down his spine. Since arriving at the field, his dreams had become a collage of others' memories. The previous night, he had relived the last breath of an unknown man, his heart failing as he held a faded photograph. Now, during the day, flashes of emotions invaded his thoughts. The joy of an artist painting a picture, the despair of a mother lost in a crowd. It was as if the web, sensing his hesitation, was trying to persuade him to maintain the connection. As they walked through the field, Ruby pointed to furrows in the ground, marks left by animals that seemed to avoid the webs. "They feel it," she explained. "The same force that attracts us repels them." He noticed that the plants near the structures grew abnormally, with translucent leaves and flowers that didn't fully open. Nature reacted to the technology like an organism rejecting a foreign body. In the late afternoon, they decided to camp near the antenna. As they set up their tent, a group of villagers from the neighboring town appeared, led by Anya. Their faces were pale, their eyes shining with a mixture of curiosity and fear. "The voices are louder now," a young man said, rubbing his temples. "We can't sleep without hearing what others are thinking." Anya handed him a notebook filled with drawings, alien landscapes, unknown faces, complex mathematical equations. "My grandson did this yesterday," she murmured. "He's 7 years old." Ruby flipped through the pages, stunned. The images matched Synapse Corporation projects, diagrams of neural networks that she herself had drawn years ago. "The web is self-replicating," she concluded. "It uses human creativity as fuel." She realized that the antenna wasn't just a transmitter, but a catalyst, amplifying the collective capacity to dream and transforming it into something tangible. The webs were physical manifestations of this energy, a bridge between the global conscious and unconscious. During the pre-dawn hours, he was awakened by a low hum, similar to the buzzing of giant insects. He followed the sound to a clearing, where dozens of webs intertwined into a spherical structure, pulsing in sync with the antenna. In the center, a female figure hovered suspended by silver threads. It was the woman from his dreams, with silver hair. Her eyes were open, but empty, as if observing something beyond the physical world. He reached out, but Ruby pulled him back. "She's caught between two states," she whispered. The web chose her as a central node, a point of convergence. The next morning, the woman had vanished, leaving only a trail of melted webs on the ground. They analyzed the remnants, discovering that the substance contained traces of human DNA mixed with Synapse technology. The web wasn't just connecting minds, it was merging biology and machine, creating a hybrid entity. "This explains the shared dreams," Ruby said. "They aren't just memories. They are fragments of a collective consciousness forming." News of the web's expansion spread rapidly. Reports from distant cities described identical phenomena. Webs emerging in parks, people waking up with abilities they didn't possess before. A musician in Kyoto composed melodies in dead languages. A child in Buenos Aires drew maps of non-existent constellations. Synapse Corporation issued a statement denying responsibility, but they knew this was only the beginning. The antenna in the field was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. He knew they couldn't ignore what had happened. The web of dreams was more than misused technology. It was a reflection of humanity itself, its hopes, fears, and desires projected onto an invisible fabric. They looked at each other, understanding that the true battle wasn't just against Synapse Corporation, but against human nature itself. Connection was inevitable, but freedom was essential. The balance they sought wasn't something that could be forced, but something that needed to be discovered, step by step. As he left the field, he carried not only the bag with the device, but also the weight of a discovery that could change the world. He knew the web would continue to expand, that other antennas would emerge, and that other men like him would try to understand what they were seeing. But now he had a mission, to find ways to control this connection, to make it conscious and beneficial, instead of a chaotic force consuming minds without permission. It was a monumental task, but he felt he had finally found his purpose. And so, with the sun rising once more over the field, he walked away from the shimmering webs, leaving behind the strangeness and uncertainty. He knew the journey had only just begun, that the web of dreams wasn't the end, but merely the beginning of a new reality. And, however much the world tried to forget, it would never be the same again.